Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ben. Happy birthday to you. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 27 podcast. My name is Harry Barr, and as always, I am joined by Ben Butler and Joscel Manarambona. Guys, how are we?
And we have a birthday special today for our very good friend Ben Butler is turning the big 2-2.
I am indeed.
How
Yeah,
you
I'm
doing?
well, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm actually quite tired today. So it's Sunday when we're recording, but I was in London with Harry the last 2 days, and
I'm still here.
We just had, we just had a cracker of a time out there. A lot of drinking. I mean, it's weird. Like even with a 10 p.m. curfew, you can still be tired.
Oh yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
I
no,
mean-
it was really good fun.
Yeah,
And-
I was checking my my like walk-in records or whatever on my phone, and we walked 22 kilometers yesterday, and today I think I've walked like 9, just around. Yeah,
Jesus, that's a lot of walking. 22
definitely.
kilometers.
Yeah. Long
getting
over.
fit, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it's been good.
Oh,
I've had a really
wow.
good day. And then, get to celebrate it with a cheeky recording of a podcast. And had a good time Friday night. Met up with literally a bunch of randomers, and they all got me birthday presents. And Harry, best friend for 2 years, that didn't get me anything.
No one
was
told
just
me.
sat
No one
there
told me.
So awkwardly, because everyone else got me a card and presents.
Yeah. I mean, in my defense, I didn't know any of them, so I obviously
Did
couldn't
I?
have been told about the secret card giving thing, and I was going to get you a birthday
Jesus.
present, but I was going to get one of those dinosaur grabber things from the Natural History Museum. But then what happened when we went to try and go to the Natural History Museum?
It was fully booked. Sadly.
Fully booked, yeah,
So,
yeah.
we did nothing.
Yeah,
It's been.
I can't believe
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I tried to get like tickets to the National Gallery today. It's booked out until next Saturday.
Jesus.
Mad.
Crazy.
Oh, no. Tough
And
man.
this week it's good to see that Harry's using the old Travel Lodge Wi-Fi, so it's very
Uh-huh.
sketchy today.
Yeah. Oh, am I dipping in and out for you?
Yeah.
Just your video.
Oh no. Okay.
It's
Well,
just video.
the good news is I'm recording from my end, so I'll be nice and silky smooth. I hope.
Yeah, I was going to say hopefully, yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. But no, thank you for that rendition as well. I hate it when people do that, and that happened to me several times the other night as well. People sang me happy birthday when I was getting shots given to me, and when I was cake was getting given to me as well. It was fun.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very fun. Very fun. And I wouldn't have done it unless I knew you didn't like it. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And I have to say though, it was weird because London was quiet. It was like,
yeah. Well,
it was kind of odd having this massive city pretty much to ourselves, you would say. Like it was not
Yeah,
London
actually.
at
Yeah,
all. Yeah,
well,
you could just walk wherever. The tube was dead. Like
Mhm,
it, even my train up and stuff and everything was just so quiet.
yeah.
Oh my God.
We had like no issue, getting a table or anything. Like,
No, yeah, like I was like we were walking around on Saturday night, but like, oh, are we actually going to be able to get anywhere? And we just walked into this Thai restaurant. There were like 2 other tables. We're like, nice. Yeah.
Damn.
And it wasn't
Yeah.
because it was a bad place. It was because the food was nice. It was just because of COVID. But yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Joscel? What have you been up to?
Honestly, nothing anywhere near exciting as that. I've literally just been at work for the past 2 days. It's been an absolute catastrophe. Training in the morning, standard. Right, okay, lovely. But no, it was all right, to be honest. It was very same old. Literally nothing exciting has happened in the past 48 hours. Honestly, it's ridiculous.
A story of 2 very separate events happening then.
Yeah. Complete polar opposites to each other. I mean, I suppose.
And on the topic of polar, we have a really exciting guest that is coming up in a little bit.
Yeah.
All about, I don't know, should we give it away? Polar, that's your little hint.
Well, her name's going to be in the title, so
you'll find out. Yeah.
Her name's going to be in the title, so yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, she's not called Polar, is she?
Oh dear.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah.
The boys are back. The boys are back.
Oh, some classical High School Musical 3, medium, like middle of the film songs. Nice. I remember when that film first came out, and like, me and my best friend, we would go to his house and we'd sing it because he had a baseball bat. So we do like that grabby handle thing they did, and yeah, I was the coolest.
I would love to see a video of you
what, like 9-year-old me doing that,
dancing doing choreography of High School Musical.
Oh
yeah, mate, great.
Wow, that would be some tape, I have to say.
How much would you pay for that? How much would you be willing to pay for that?
Nothing. I should get it for free.
Yeah, for your friends.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Free.
Mm.
No, but you're my best friend, so I'm going to make you pay for it anyway. But yeah, if it existed, but it doesn't.
It could be my birthday present.
Oh,
but it doesn't exist.
Well, you can recreate it.
What, with a friend I haven't spoken to in 10 years.
You got an evening.
Yeah. Oh, hi Billy. Hi Billy. How are you? I hope you're well. By the way, I know you're in Canada, but can you come round and film the Boys Are Back video?
You don't have to do it with that guy.
Oh, really?
Huh?
Yeah, oh my gosh! It all links. Everything is linking.
All the Easter eggs.
It's like, who am I? I'm a polar explorer. I live in Canada. So I saw this thing in the news the other day, and it's about like this guy. So when like you travel between cities, everyone just looks at their phones, and like, you know, you got Google Maps, you got Apple Maps, Waze. I think the other one is, you know, there's big things of like driving or getting the train or whatever somewhere, but there's not very anything for walking between places. So there's this guy who wants to sort of start like a volunteer run app, which will like show the best routes to get from like town to town or city to city.
Yeah. And
like he got the idea during lockdown to do it. And I think walking, like just walking routes.
Okay.
And I think like, especially like being in London yesterday and just like we walked everywhere. I don't. Yeah, you know, just we were able to walk across the city, and even today, like I walked from Covent Garden to Trafalgar Square, which isn't actually, it's a lot closer than I thought, but I still walked from there to there, and then South Bank, and then it's like all around there. I didn't even get a single tube today, and it's just like, I think lockdown has really like got people walking again more than anything else. What are your thoughts?
I thought you were going off on the guy.
I think it's a really like interesting.
So it's an app to show you the quickest way to walk somewhere.
Yeah, like a volunteer. Like everyone sort of. Like,
but my maps does that. Does yours not?
No, but it's not like walking in a city. It's sort of like finding a route from somewhere to somewhere. Like, but I mean, like, because Google Maps or whatever isn't. It's not like the best for, say, if I wanted to walk from my village where I live to like 2 towns across, like go on a walking thing, I'd have to look at a map and then look at all the trails and stuff. This is like something to basically do that with your phone.
I think mine does that.
Oh, fair enough.
No,
but like walking routes as well, not just.
Yeah. I think mine does that.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, but I think that he wants to make it like more accessible for people, though.
I'll say, I mean, I wouldn't be walking to any city.
Walk
like Portsmouth. It's like 5 hours.
How slow are you walking?
I don't know. I just don't know how far it is either.
Fair enough.
Because I'm like in this bend bit, so I'd have to bend round again.
Oh, wow! You have to turn around.
It would add time. Yeah.
Have you guys been reading the Oxford Mail recently? There's been
I don't live in Oxford anymore.
The Oxford Mail hate our uni, so
they hate our forms, but at the same time,
the Oxford Mail hate students. I believe all people over the age of 22 hate students at the moment. So it's just.
I'm just in that bracket until December. Though I'm just gonna hate you guys. Like, oi! Yeah. I remember when I was younger, didn't have all this going on.
Yeah, it's just a lose situation for everyone, really.
Yeah, I do believe, Ben. I think it's time for a trip down to the Rusty Club.
Whoa!
First one of the series.
First one of the series. Hell yeah!
Oh my god!
Anyone fancy a pint?
Our first guest of season 2 is someone who has had the privilege of traveling to 70 countries and specifically spending a large amount of time in the Arctic. She wants to encourage more women to get into the wilderness game and smash the glass ceiling that exists within the natural world. Please welcome the lovely Claire Wallace. Claire, how are you doing?
Hi,
Hi, Claire.
Thank you. Happy to be here. It's a treat. Thanks for having me.
This is exciting. So in season 1, we had 2 Americans on. So we've been to the Atlantic. We've crossed the sea. But now we're in Canada. We're in Canada. We're going worldwide. This is exciting.
Also, a dual nationality as well, not just Canadian.
Yes.
Swedish. Is it Swedish? Yes.
How does that come about?
Yeah, I mean, I do have the privilege of having dual citizenship. My mother is a Swiss citizen, so she always thought it would be beneficial for the kids, the 3 of us, to have Swiss nationality, because apparently, which I didn't know, it's one of the most difficult citizenships to get if you're not actually Swiss.
Oh,
so,
wow.
you know, the benefit of being able to work in the EU and live in the EU if I wanted. So my dad's Canadian and my mom is Swiss.
Yeah.
That is a cool little mixture. It's a really cool mixture, but it's like a unique one. That's not something you come by often at all.
Yeah, it's a pretty bulletproof combination, because you get the colonies and all the Commonwealth countries, and then you get the EU. So I feel pretty invincible at the border.
Yeah, actually, you're right. It's probably like the one to have.
Yeah. If anything, I think it's very silly for people to leave the EU. I don't know why anyone would ever do it, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, that's another subject. That's a total subject. So we'll go into it. Claire, again, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
And so we want to talk to you all about the wildness and specifically the Arctic and, you know, the poles. Because do you want to tell the audience a little bit about what your job is? Because it's really cool.
It's really cool.
Pun intended. It is pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's a very unique and strange profession. I guess my official title is a polar expedition guide. And my primary role is to serve as a field guide for trips to both the Arctic and the Antarctic. So depending on what time of year, I have a different season. So we go to the Antarctic in the austral summer, which would normally be now. And then of course, in the Northern Hemisphere, summer would be the Arctic. So I'm constantly chasing sun, even though it's in very diluted UV form, because it's so cold in these areas. And I facilitate expedition trips, and a lot of them are ship-based. So we use ships, usually ice enhanced or icebreakers, as a platform to explore these places. And my day-to-day role it's really things like I lecture on the flora, fauna, politics, history of the polar regions that we're in. And then we also do field work, which is taking people on zodiacs or kayaking around icebergs or hiking, you know, across the tundra. So it's really cool. And it's been a really strange job to get involved with, because I assumed it would be rather short-lived, but it's morphed into a fully fledged career. I've been doing it now for about 7 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So something we normally do, it's just the way I like interviewing, is I like to start from the beginning and then we work our way up. So when you were young, were you always outside? Did you love just being outdoors and doing all these things? Yeah. I guess so did you grow up in Canada?
I did. I did.
So I mean, it's basically like a massive forest, isn't it? So
yeah, I mean, depending on what part you're in, you've got forest, you've got coastline, you've got tundra. I think the term Canadian wild child, little flower baby, comes to mind. I just could not get out of the woods and the wilderness, and I absolutely loved being outside. My parents were very adamant that we spend a lot of time outside. My mom is a big rock climber and hiker, and she's been a big inspiration for me in terms of outdoors. And I was just always in a puddle of mud with, oversized sweaters and playing around with the boys. I was a bit of a tomboy, so I didn't really want to spend my time with dolls and maybe what other girls would grow up to enjoy. So I didn't stand a chance, is what I was saying.
That's so interesting though. And then you just, I guess let's skip a bit ahead. how does one go from, lover of nature to then being up in the Arctic and starting expeditions? Because let's be honest, that's not something you just find on an agency website.
You don't go on LinkedIn and see it.
That's not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very strange job to happen upon. And when I first got into expedition guiding, I didn't even know the industry existed. I stumbled upon it and went, what? That's a thing. I finished my first degree when I was about 21, just turned 22. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew what I didn't want to do, which was a desk job. And so I graduated my bachelor's in political science and history and decided I'm going to travel the world for a while and figure out what I want to do. And the thing that came to mind was to try a new job in every country that I was going to, or something along those lines. And so I went over to Europe, and I worked in auditing. I was an auditor for a little bit of time, and then
that sounds quite boring. I mean, compared to what you're doing now, I don't know how. Yeah, okay.
And everybody hates auditors, right? They're like the worst type of people, apparently.
They're not. Yeah, they're not great.
And I went over to South America, and I taught English in Peru for a little while. Thought maybe teaching would be an appropriate line of work. And I also went and got, my diving certificates, and thought maybe dive master, and did that in the Galapagos for a bit.
Your CV is crazy.
Greece.
That is a strong CV.
Yeah. What experience you have? Everything.
Diving.
And all trades, have tried everything and I'm kind of mediocre at all of it.
That's crazy.
And I was still just traveling around after about a year and a half, wondering what I should do with my life, when I was standing in a particularly long immigration line between Peru and I think it was Ecuador. And it was, a long time since I had heard anything but Spanish. And the guy in front of me was speaking English, and he was British, and he had a British accent. And I immediately kind of attacked him and thought, oh my gosh, finally a chance to speak English for the first time. And we got talking, and he ended up being a first officer for one of the ships that went down to the Antarctic and did these types of trips. And we spent the better part of 3 hours in line just chatting about that industry. And, immediately after that conversation, I just thought that is the most interesting line of work. That's definitely for me. So it wasn't so much that I grew up dreaming of going to the polar regions. I understood them to be a completely unattainable place to visit as a common person without huge resources at my disposal. And after that conversation, bless his heart, he, took my information down, and he got me connected with my now boss, or what was then my boss. And so that's kind of how I got into the world of expedition guiding, which is how most people get into it, which is by accident or through someone for sure.
It's just like such. It is, as you said. You can think about all the places you could travel in the world, but I don't know. Is there an airport at the North Pole? No, not one that I'm aware of. You can't just go.
Just nip over. You can't
have to go. Yeah, you have to go with like a purpose and as you said, probably a lot of resources behind you.
Definitely. Most people that visit are scientists. There's quite a few scientific stations, or even using ships as platforms to engage in scientific work. So to the common person, to a plebe like me, it's just not possible.
So what was your first experience like? Which pole did you visit first?
It would have been
How cold was it?
Antarctica.
Okay.
And it was, kind of a mind-bending experience, like most people who have been for the first time. And it would have been in November. So that's right at the beginning of the summer season, tail end of spring. And I remember flying into Ushuaia, which is the southern tip of Argentina, where we would catch the ship and then have to make a 2-day nautical crossing of the worst seas in the world, known as the Drake Passage. And then after the second night, you kind of emerge in this beautiful polar landscape. And so the first trip I went on, still to this day, happens to be the worst storm I've ever encountered on a ship.
Bodes well, yeah.
And I just was bringing up my boots the whole time. And I remember thinking, I don't think I can do this job. If I have to make this crossing every 15 days, I'm gonna lose it. And when we finally, that second night after I emerged from my own personal hell, kind of bleary-eyed and, you know, hadn't eaten anything in 2 days, I opened the door of the ship cabin and was just met with pure sunshine, calm, still seas, and just icebergs in every direction. And it was definitely one of those moments where, you know, you get very emotional. I get emotional even just thinking about it, but I definitely had a small weep. It was beautiful. So it ended up being a phenomenal first trip. And it wasn't that cold. We're mostly coastal. So with the ships, we don't go inland. And that's where the highest elevation is and the corresponding coldest temperature. So it's actually quite temperate. I think it was around -5 or 6 when I was there for the first time. And
That's a lot warmer than I'd expect, actually. I was expecting like -20.
Canada, isn't it?
Yeah.
it's balmy, you know.
It's just a bit of a nippy day in January for us.
And you know, I grew up in the prairies of Canada, which was routinely -30 as a child, so I was prepared, you know. And really, it wasn't that cold at all. It was perfectly tropical compared to Canadian standards.
It's just amazing. I just can't. You know, it is one of those things that I'd love to go to. I think.
Yeah, I mean,
but I don't know how I'd get there, or you know, like, so you say you did
like freak me out.
Yeah, I think the boats freak me out as well.
Like,
you said you do like what expeditions to it. So is that something that you can book onto? Are you taking? Could we just book onto it and you take us round the North Pole, the South Pole?
Do an episode on location.
Absolutely. That is pretty much how it works. And it's a very new industry. That was never the case. The industry in the form we know it to be today, which is, you know, available to the masses, for lack of a better term, started as early as the 70s with a company called Lindblad Expedition, which is now Lindblad National Geographic. They have a partnership. And Lindblad was kind of just a guy who took people down and started building trips. And it kind of took off as companies started procuring ships and expedition teams. And by the 90s, it was a full industry, just very under wraps. And a lot of people didn't know about it, and still very expensive. And as the last 2 decades have gone by, the industry has just exploded in terms of how many operators are down there, but also the interest that we're receiving, the market interest for these kinds of trips, because again, people just thought that it was so unattainable. And with more companies comes more competition, so prices start to become, you know, a little bit more reasonable. Still, you know, quite expensive, but attainable. Yeah.
How much?
Well, it depends.
Right. So what? Come on, sell us one of the packages. The premium. What's the bronze? How long do you have to spend? Because I'm not going to go for a week, am I? It's got to be a bit longer.
Yeah.
What is it? Like a 3-week trip? I don't know.
You have every different kind of trip. We have maybe 40 different itineraries. You know, some are very short and some are, you know, 21 days, and you have different areas and different regions. So it just depends on what you're interested in. But I would say your kind of bread and butter Antarctic trip down the western side of the Antarctic Peninsula, which is probably the most affordable, for both in terms of time that people can get off and price, probably run you about $6,000 or $7,000 US without flights.
Oh my lord!
And how long expect you to be like 400 quid or something, Ben? Like...
No, I was expecting maybe like 2,000 or 3,000. So how long would you actually be there for then with that?
The trip itself would be about 12 days. 4 of those would be on a crossing. You'd have 5 Antarctic days, like expedition days.
I don't want this to sound silly as well, but you said there's an itinerary. Okay. Like, it's not like we're gonna go see the Eiffel Tower. It's not like there's the Champs-Elysees down the road. You know, it's just all ice, isn't it? Like, I admit it's very pretty. I'm sure it looks gorgeous, and I would love to go.
Of course, Ben is the person to go get them going. I was expecting a bit more, actually. Not gonna lie, it's a bit
is
bland.
this it? You know, like it's just a bit of ice.
I guess there's an off chance you might meet David Attenborough if he's doing another documentary, but
Yeah.
It doesn't have quite the same types of sites, you know, I'll agree. And it's not like it's a cruise where you're stopping into ports and things like that. It is very much a wilderness expedition. So you're going to places that have, you know, landscape and animals. And so we visit a lot of penguin colonies. So we'll go to different colonies.
That's pretty cool.
And we'll
that makes up for it.
Actually, I do have a question about penguins, actually. So obviously they've not got any major predators there. So whenever they see humans, they just want to go and say hello. They don't run away. They're just like, oh, more bigger penguins that are wearing like silly feathers. Like, yeah, that's what I've heard. Like when people are doing research, they just come up and just see what's going on. Yeah,
absolutely. They have predators in the water. Their main predator in you know, the aquatic sense is the leopard seal. And so when you're in the water, penguins don't want anything to do with you. If you're in your zodiac, you know, they're just, you know, they're flying right by you because that's a dangerous time for them. But on land, you're right, they have absolutely no natural land predators. And so they're very kind of curious, especially the chicks. Once they get a little bit older, they will definitely come up to you and kind of peck at your boot or just have no fear. So on our end, we have to impose rules about how close you can get because, you know, they have their way, the penguins would be fine with you standing pretty much next to them or on top of them. So
absolutely. Have you been diving in the water?
No, I haven't.
No.
A couple of companies used to run dive trips, but logistically they were really difficult, and they were finding a lot of people tended to over exaggerate their experience when they were booking on to the kind of dive trips that companies were offering. And, you know, it's a lot more challenging, not just because of the cold water, but you're dry suit diving, which is a different buoyancy level altogether. And the closest, you know, high pressure chamber to kind of, you know, get you out of the bends if you have a diving accident is McMurdo, which is the interior all the way. You might have to fact check me on that a little bit. I believe it's McMurdo, but you know, nowhere near kind of where you need to have quick access to. So they were really concerned about the safety aspect of it. So it got kind of pulled in the early 2000s.
I guess it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so. When we were doing a bit of our research, it said that you have a master's in polar law. Can you explain what polar law is?
Sure. Polar law, I guess it, for lack of a better term, it's closest to international law.
A bit like maritime law.
Very similar. I mean, that's one of the components. Essentially, polar law is all the legal regimes that govern both the Arctic and the Antarctic. So for the Antarctic, you have things.
So it has no state, no one. I know, obviously, I don't think, but it's not split at all. It's just a free bit of land.
Well, the Antarctic, it's essentially it's a free bit of land, but it's a protected bit of land.
Yeah.
There are historical claims to the Antarctic, but they've been tied up in the treaty, and that they're not allowed to be furthered. So the treaty body that governs the Antarctic has been the same treaty body and same document that they've been working off of for decades, since the early 50s. So it's one of the most successful peaceful treaties in the world. And governs everything from resource extraction to tourism, environmental protection and stewardship. And again, does a really good job of kind of freezing those claims that were made prior to the formation of the treaty. But polar law itself, when you come to the Arctic, you've got sovereign countries with borders that extend into the Arctic. So it's a completely different legal regime. You have sovereign states, and then you have cooperative legal regimes for things like fisheries and management of fisheries, and for shipping. Shipping is really big in the Arctic, especially. So the Arctic is a lot more dynamic in terms of what law and what you've been hearing possibly in the news about the Arctic opening up and countries staking claims, as opposed to the Antarctic, which is actually quite tied up legally in terms of what the future might look.
Okay. That's really interesting. So you just you know, it's something that I never thought would, I don't know, I just never thought there would be law around it, but obviously there has to be, because all people just, you know, take it when they
absolutely. And I mean, wherever there's people, there's going to be incidents. Something that has taught us.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So there are two like themes I guess I'd like to just talk to you about. So the first one is women in the wilderness, and it's something that I know that you're quite active about. And it was really interesting because when I read that, I was thinking about all the nature shows that I watch or that I know about. You know, so obviously David Attenborough, okay, he's like the guy. So I guess, you know, he creates a lot of shows that's a bit different. But then I was thinking about some other UK-based shows. And there was a show for children called Deadly 60 that we used to watch when we were younger. So that had this guy called Steve Bracklesham. Yeah. And then I was thinking about other big nature people, and I thought Steve Irwin, Australia, yeah. And as they're all men, like, and I generally can't think of
any women ones.
Why do you think that is?
It's hard to place my finger on it exactly. Perhaps I've always experienced, and I'm not sure if it's the case with other women, but there seems to be an inherent trust that is kind of unsaid that people tend to experience with the presence of a capable male figure. Kind of this traditional idea of strength and masculinity and being entirely capable to impart knowledge on people and to lead people in the wilderness and in nature. That seems to be the case as well for personalities, like you said, TV personalities, in that they just tend to receive a bit of a better audience and seemingly more interested as well. That being said, I think back to some of my own kind of personal female heroes, and you think about the women like the Leaky girls. So, you know, Jane Goodall, for example, who is a real pioneer woman when it came to science and women in the wilderness. And there is one female, a British woman, and she's been on the television for quite a while. I think her name is Kate Humble, and she's done a lot with wilderness and sort of.
Oh, she does Springwatch and things like that, I think.
And kind of animal.
Recognize her. I do recognize her.
Yeah, but you are right. She's kind of the only female that springs to mind immediately when it comes to TV personalities. And maybe that's just still the way that the entertainment industry is. But in terms of where the actual expedition industry is going and the travel industry is going, it's a little bit in the other direction, which is where I see even more and more and more women taking part, and it becoming a big part of the industry itself is having kind of a real female backbone to teams and you know, much less kind of male dominated presence in a typically male dominated industry.
Yeah, well, that's good because, you know, it did just pop into our minds, and we had a discussion about it before you came on, and we just thought generally we can't think of any, you know, females that are leading the way, and I just don't understand why. It's not like, but no, it's good to see that there are, and hopefully, you know, some people will break through. And the second thing I just want to talk to you about, and it's probably really obvious to you, is what has the change been like from, so when did you first go to the Arctic? Was it 8 years ago?
So first time in the Antarctic would have been 2014.
Okay, so 6 years ago to now, what's the loss been like? You know, how much have we lost?
Yeah, in terms of climate change and it's a topic that comes up a lot, and I think a lot of people ask me as well. And it depends on, you know, what areas you've been operating, because some are different, you know, kind of harder hit than others. The Antarctic, in terms of actual sea ice loss that we experience from year to year, it's very difficult to measure in 6 years, because in terms of climate change, 6 years is the blink of an eye. That being said, we still see some changes in the Arctic. So the Antarctic really there's seasonal fluctuation and seasonal variation, but overall we don't see kind of catastrophic loss like we might in the Arctic. Where we do see changes, and this is me speaking personally as, you know, having been in the field for 6 years, we see changes in sort of the biosphere. So invasive species, or suddenly there's these little invertebrates called salps, which are correlated to a decrease in krill, which is the main whale food source. So we suddenly start to see way more salps as kind of a bio indicator of change, which is not a good one. Or we'll see a change in penguin distribution. So some of the penguin species that are more adapted to warmer weather, warmer Antarctic weather, they're able to push further and further south, which is colder, because it's getting less and less cold every year. So they're displacing some of the other penguin populations, and there seems to be kind of winners and losers that we're seeing. And it's remarkable to me to even see those changes, because I shouldn't be able to see changes like that in a 6-year period, again, because this is so fast in terms of how climate change progresses, or we've been documenting it as progressing. The Arctic's a little bit different, and it's because we see a lot more change with things like glaciers and glacial retreat. Those have always been seen as indicators of climate change, and a really great way to visualize climate change is you can see how far a glacier has receded up a valley based on where it was. And even, you know, some of the early scientific expeditions and explorers would take photos of valleys with glaciers. You can hold up a photo of that exact area that you're in and look side to side and see a huge decrease in the size, extent of the glacier, you know, hundreds of kilometers sometimes, depending. And, you know, that's maybe a 50 or 60 year difference in those, you know, types. So the one instance that sticks out to me was in a place in East Greenland, where we would often go to see kind of calving, where ice would fall off of the glacier and into the water, and it'd be this.
That makes me really sad. It actually makes me, when I see those clips, it makes me really sad.
Yeah,
definitely. See it hit the water, and I know it's just going to melt even more, and I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, it is a natural part. I mean, glaciers have been calving and falling and breaking apart. That is a normal kind of process, is for that ice to fall into the water, but it's the extent of how fast it's going and how much is calving and how much is melting as well. And so we come around the corner, you know, and we're experiencing this amazing glacier that's kind of hanging on the side of a rock, and it's kind of amazing, like avalanches and thundering crashes. Like, whoa, this is incredible. And that very next year, like 1 full year later, we came back to that exact bay, and we're coming around the corner with the ship, and all the expedition staff were on deck, and we're looking, and we get, okay, so the glacier should be right there, and we're kind of looking, and okay, this is weird, the glacier should be here by now. And we're double checking our charts, and we're double checking kind of our resources, and we ended up kind of blowing past the area that it was meant to be, and it dawned on us it's because that glacier is no longer there. So even in 1 year, I mean, it wasn't a huge glacier. It was only a small kind of fringe part of it. You know, we saw this complete evaporation of a glacier. And it's very difficult, I think, with climate change to definitively point at something and say that's because of climate change, because really we don't know for sure. It's just, we have to go based off of what the research says and what the science says. And there's just not enough being done in terms of every single glacier being monitored in the Arctic and things like that to know or to keep tabs on. But we have a pretty good idea of the changes that are occurring year after year. And even things like polar bears that are having a really hard time surviving on less to eat because the sea ice is diminishing. We see that. We see more and more skinny polar bears and things like that. So definitely invisible. Yeah, I know.
No, generally, so you know, if people were like, oh, it's only a bit of ice, okay, fine. But we're literally making penguins kick out other penguins so they can be in
They're picking up their own.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so we've had another episode in our season 2 before this one, and we spoke about nature quite a lot then. I think this series might be a bit environmental based. We're really going to hammer home that we're going to save the planet. I just think it's just so sad to see. It must be sad for you, it must be like going back to these places, and because especially when your job is in nature, to see how it's just kind of going down the pan and people aren't doing anything about it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just so
Definitely.
sad.
Yeah, it can be for sure. I think a lot of the companies, and especially the expedition guys, we place such a heavy emphasis on educating people of these issues. You know, we're trying not to bring people down too much when we're out there, you know, making everyone really depressed, but it's a huge part of our
Let's make the people depressed.
Yeah.
Let's depress everyone.
Oh no.
I just think it's the right thing. Well, I say the right thing to do, but hopefully that sort of kick people out the bunts, do something.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that's what we see, and for the longest time, I'm a believer in people are only going to protect the things that they love and understand, and so the trips that we do are hugely important for people to understand what the polar regions are even about and what challenges they face. And our hope is that, you know, they kind of fall in love with these places, which most people do, and then they go back to their countries and they can kind of maybe take their own personal measures, or even, you know, go on campaigns, or, you know, voting patterns, anything that kind of helps, you know, it helps the environment move along in a direction that, you know, we as expedition guides want it to take. So we do
I'm on
a
my
lot
way.
of work to
I'm coming down.
6,000. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm making that money coming down before.
Okay, guys, buy some merch, and then we can go and.
Yeah. Wow, that's just like. I think it's so sad as well, because you've got to get people there. It is that thing where people don't. If you don't see it with your own eyes,
you not understand detriment.
It's not happening. And it is one of those things where unless you see it, you need to see it to believe it. And it's so bad that people have that mindset, I think.
I think it's nature, human nature, I think.
Yeah. Let's get to a happier, thing. So, as I said earlier, 70 countries. What's your favorite? What's the best one you've been to?
Oh, I mean, there's so many, of course. It depends, I guess, on what I'm looking for. But I mean, I've always been a big lover of Iceland. I ended up kind of working there before I started with my expedition kind of job. I was a guide in Northern Iceland throughout university. So every time I had time off university, I'd go and guide there in the summer months. So I've always loved Iceland. I went and I did a master's in Iceland, so I actually lived there for some time.
Oh,
I think you might be the coolest person.
Did you have to learn Icelandic?
No, thankfully, I tried to learn some, but I'm pretty bad at it. And my degree was in English, thank the Lord.
Oh, that's okay. That's cool though. Wow,
big
cool life.
Big lover of places like Greenland. I spent some time living there as part of my degree as well. And then maybe non-polar, just to give people a bit of a break. I really love Vietnam. I think it's one of the most interesting places. And maybe it was just who I was at that point. You know, it was kind of everything that I needed it to be for me. And I had a very transcendent, profound experience there. But I absolutely love Vietnam, and probably South Africa. Love South Africa.
I love South Africa. South Africa is so cool. So cool.
Fantastic.
Can I just quickly ask what the Galapagos Islands are like? You said earlier, Are they cool?
They're very cool.
The turtle's cool.
Yeah.
Ben loves turtle. Anything to do with turtles.
My favourite animal is a turtle. Claire, what's your favourite animal?
I have to say probably polar bear. I know it's cliche, but I love bears. I love whales.
That's cool.
Well.
Is it true? Okay, is it true? I saw this on a Ricky Gervais skit. But polar bears aren't camouflaged because of their black noses. It's like they have to hide it so that they're camouflaged. Is that right?
Yeah, kind of. I mean,
yeah, because like if they're crawling along, you're like, oh, well, there's the black nose. I know there's a polar bear there.
Yeah. I mean, they're incredible hunters. Are extremely stealthy, and so even if they're not hiding when they're approaching, they'll pick the direction that's downwind, and they do something called an aqua stalk, where they'll go underwater underneath ice and with a seal on the other side, and they'll swim under the ice pan and then pop up on the other side. And
that is.
So they're.
Have you seen that? Have you seen that happen?
I have. It's amazing.
That is so cool.
Yeah. Everyone loves a bit of carnage, right? But
people love violence.
So we just quickly had to change the meeting. Just so everyone knows, Joscel has now gone to work to do his Christmas wine tasting menu thing in the middle of October. So that's why you won't hear him for the rest of the podcast. Don't worry. He will be back next episode. So yeah, we finished.
The favourite animal, wasn't it?
Trying to think what we finished on. Talking about favourite animals. Yeah, it was favourite animals, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay, let's find a question to start this new segue. This is how inexperienced we are. Oh yeah, I've got one. So Claire, on your little CV thingy on the internet, what I found you on, it said that you do rappelling and horse trekking.
Yeah, I did at least.
What, in the Arctic?
No, that would have been in Iceland. That was prior to working
That's
as
so cool.
guide. Yeah, it was good. It was my first kind of outdoor job. I had really, when I was 18, I started that. I think I was well suited for the job at the beginning because my dad would often drive me on weekends when I was in high school to the mountains, and I'd do a course of sorts, some sort of first aid or rappelling or ropes course, because I just desperate to do anything in the outdoors, and I wasn't really drawn to the idea of spending the weekend at the mall or at the movies with my friends. So every couple of weeks my dad would drive 4 hours out to the mountains, sign whatever waivers he had to sign because I was underage, and I would get to partake in these amazing kind of certifying courses. And so by the time I was 18, I was pretty certified to be an outdoor guide. And my family knew somebody in Iceland, and I reached out to them, and they said, we know of a place that's probably looking for a guide, especially one that can speak a couple languages. And so if you're willing to go over, you can have a summer job for 4 months. And that was the rappelling and kind of horse trekking guide position. And so I did that for 4 summers in a row, and that was my college job, really.
Are you just waiting for like your own TV shows, like, because your CV is unreal. Like, it would be so cool, like the Bear Grylls of Canada.
Oh, I don't know. I think the idea of being in the limelight is a little bit nerve-wracking for me. I think I'm a little bit weirder than people are looking for.
Can I ask you, is there any better job in the world than the one you do?
Well, not that I've found. Of course, it has its drawbacks, and I always preface what I'm about to say with kind of a real glimpse into what the job can be. It's the most amazing, incredible job, but it has pretty extreme, downsides. Things like you can say goodbye to your Christmases. I haven't been home for Christmas in pretty much 7 years.
Wow.
You miss all the weddings, all the birthdays, and until last 2 years, I had pretty much no communication. There was no internet on the ships, so you'd be months and months without access to the outside world.
Wow.
Which is pretty great, but at the same time, difficult if you've got family or a partner or anything like that. So it is the most insane, crazy job, but you're so burnt out. It's dangerous. You're working with your body. The physicality of it is pretty extreme. But the benefits of the job far outweigh the negatives, but it's definitely a lifestyle, definitely extreme, and we kind of liken it to a bit of a drug. It's one high after the next high and when you come down off of it, after you finish up a contract, you're just kind of flattened for a couple weeks, and it's really hard for people I think in this job to kind of roll into any other normal life that's shore based, regular society. The highs aren't there, and people find it quite mundane. And I know a couple people find it difficult to leave the ships, and that's why we sometimes have people that have been doing this already for 30-35 years, because it's just like nothing else, and it is an incredible job.
I do think I can see sort of how, if you've been doing that for 10-15 years or so, then going to work in a shop, it's not quite the same. Like, you're never quite going to get that again. Like, but again, this, like, you're possibly the most interesting person I've ever spoken to, just about anything really. And just before we finish up, I just want to know,
you also have the coolest Instagram I think I've ever seen. The pictures, like, they're unbelievable. Like, honestly, I was just looking at them like, And you actually get to see that like every day, and I'm like, oh my god, wow, that's why you don't leave. Come on, let's be real. Like this stuff, oh my gosh, like nature is just so pretty.
Yeah.
I actually have one more question. So we're talking about all this amazing stuff in the world, okay? But you live in such a great country. Like Canada is, like, the scenery and everything there is amazing. Like, have you had your chances to explore it?
Oh yeah, I'm growing up definitely, but nothing in the last 7 years. I mean, this last summer was the first summer I've spent in Canada for probably 11 or 12 years, because I'd always leave, and go travel. And that is something that the pandemic has really, shifted things. The industry right now is completely shut down for good reason, and again, back to a lot of guides, a lot of us kind of landing in our home countries going, what do we do? Suddenly we need to sit on our haunches and try and find meaning in the chaos. And I've never been more grateful than I am in the last kind of 8 months to live in Canada, because, it's just the most incredible wilderness and the most amount of space. And the few Canadian guides that I work with, a lot of us have been fortunate to land on our feet within the domestic tourism industry, because we have such, a kind of wilderness industry that can support guides just even for Canadian purposes, for Canadians to go and experience their own wilderness. And it's been a real blessing in all of the change and chaos to explore Canada and have the time to explore Canada, because I know I wouldn't do it if I wasn't absolutely forced to stop being on the ship. So I wouldn't be able to do it on my own, where I take, a season off and really explore my own country, because I am a bit addicted, shamelessly. And so it's been a real treat to kind of have my hand forced. And I'm so grateful for Canada and for just the sheer wilderness that we have. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and what a treat for having you on here. Thank you so much for coming on. We massively appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Just before we do
Harry.
Just before we do finish, is there any sort of social media or projects you're working on that you want to sort of shout out at the moment?
Oh no, nothing that's
well, I'll shout out your Instagram. Is it just Claire Wallace? Because it's insane. You need to go see it if you love.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a couple projects that are in the works right now, but they're mostly academic. So working on a book project for polar law for the Antarctic with a couple colleagues of mine, and then I'm doing a really interesting project with a friend. She is creating a book, kind of written and illustrated by herself, of kind of women in the wilderness, or women at the intersection between climate change and the wilderness. So she's really interesting, and so look for that.
We look forward to your autobiography as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to say the least.
Definitely.
And now the most important question of the entire podcast so far. In order to become a member of the Rusty Club, which is our interview segment, we need you to answer, what is your favourite ABBA song?
Probably Take a Chance on Me.
I like that. Straight in with it as well. Like no deliberation. That is my favourite. Yeah.
We've not had that one. We like that. We've not had that one. Thank you so much again for coming on. Massively appreciate it. It's so interesting. Like, it's just such an opportunity to have you on here and talk about something that I think so many people, obviously everyone's aware of it, in the polls and stuff, but you never really find out much about it. So honestly, thank you so much for coming on.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's been great.
Thank you.
Anyone fancy a pint?
Another massive thank you to Claire for coming on. Genuinely, I think the most interesting person I've ever spoken to. Like, she's done way more than I have or ever will do in my entire life. That is just like a true inspiration.
It was so interesting. It was just so cool. Like, as you said, it's like something that you would not on a daily have a conversation about. You sort of have to seek this sort of conversation out. And it just so happens that it kind of fell into our lap and we were really fortunate. But yeah, I mean, so cool. I would really quite like to go down to the polls, I think, and go have a look at it. see what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make a snow
Either way,
angel.
Yeah, I just think it, you know, just such an interesting world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, she was saying you could just be there for months. Imagine that.
Yeah.
No, you know,
And also,
no
like,
connection to the world.
yeah,
You just wouldn't hear. Oh, it'd be so joyous at the moment, wouldn't it?
God,
God, you wouldn't have to hear about politics. You wouldn't have to hear about Corona. Oh my God, yeah, I'd just go
sign
there.
us up. Sign us up right now.
That would be quite nice, I think, actually. Yeah. Right. Buy, as Harry said, buy stuff so we can get. But no, yeah, really cool, really interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, great episode.
All right.
And yeah, obviously Joscel's gone again, just so everyone is aware.
He's not just being really quiet and
we'll
see you next week.
No, we will see you next week.
Mm-hmm.
Look forward to it.
Yeah. All right, I'll do Jocel's adios, goodbye.
You can't end it like that, can you?
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. We'll see you next time.
Happy birthday to myself. Goodbye.